Dudes on Movies podcast with your hosts, Scott Charboneau and David Lynn Miller.
Welcome to Dudes on Movies. I'm your dude, Scott.
I'm your dude, Dave.
And today we're discussing 1986's Stand By Me, directed by Rob Reiner, starring River Phoenix and Will Wheaton. But before we do that, let's talk about what we've been watching. Dave, what have you been watching?
I saw Paul Schrader's Affliction.
Affliction?
Yes. A very upsetting movie. It's about addiction and abuse and neglect and, you know, everything we've come to expect from Paul's films.
It's not about the T-shirts.
No, it's not about the T-shirts. No. it's James Coburn and Nick Nolte. They play father and son in this movie. And, dude, it's a very serious movie, obviously, and it's amazing to watch, and it's a great dramatic film. But, like, these two guys, they yell at each other in more than one scene, of course, and you start to physically feel their voices because it's James Coburn and Nick Nolte.
Yeah.
You know, it just hits you in the breadbasket, and, like, these are hard men, you know?
Yes.
And they've got that just gravel.
They're yellers.
They are.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's like, imagine if, like, Michael V. Gazzo was, like, arguing with somebody who also had a voice just like his, and it was just like, you know, like Frank Pentangeli yelling at himself. It's like, you know, you almost can't take it. You start to feel it physically, and it hurts a little bit, and you have to turn down the volume because it's too much for you. But yeah, it's still a great movie, obviously. Everybody seek it out if you haven't seen it.
All right, sounds great.
Yes.
I watched some B-grade trash from 1984 called Angel. Not sure if you're familiar with this.
I know Angel,
but
yes.
it's I think they just had like a special release on Vinegar Syndrome or something with it, actually.
It's streaming on Night Flight as well.
Ah, okay. Well, if anyone doesn't know, it's like a grimy 80s LA Boulevard movie where this high school girl is a prostitute at night, and there's a serial killer on the loose who hunts the prostitutes, and the cops are after him, and Angel's friends keep getting picked off. Mm-hmm. Sounds awesome. It's really not that great.
No, it's not.
But it gives you what you want. There's shallow characters. There's no motivation for the killer, but plenty of tension and boobs to keep you interested.
Yes, tension and boobs.
So, 1984, there you go.
Right. I walked by that box in the video store when I was a kid so many times. I remember, like, it's a split screen
Right.
of Angel in her school clothes and her street walking clothes.
Yeah.
And she's back to back, you know, and on one side it's dark and the other side's light. And yeah, that's the whole gimmick, of course, is that she, you know, by day she's a normal student, but by night, you know, such and such.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, some of the characters are interesting because there's a lot of, like, street performers on the Hollywood Boulevard,
Yeah.
you know, and they're actually vital characters in the story, but everyone's pretty shallow, and there's
Yeah.
not much to it. If it sounds like a good time to you, go ahead and watch it, but it's really not that great.
Right, exactly. It's more like a thing where if you just want to feel like you're in the 80s, check it out.
All right, Dave. So now let's talk about another 80s movie, Stand By Me.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you give everyone a synopsis?
Yes, well, this is one of the most acclaimed and accomplished Stephen King adaptations, and it's based on his novella called The Body, in which four 12-year-old boys who come from, like, dysfunctional homes, they find out about a classmate who was killed in an accident, but his body hasn't been recovered yet, so they take it upon themselves to find him and presumably become heroes. And they also have to contend with a gang of psychotic older boys who also know the body's whereabouts. And over the course of their journey, they learn a lot about themselves, and it gets pretty deep sometimes. I know we're all very familiar with this movie, so might probably be a good time to talk about it.
Yeah, this is an excellent movie, everybody, if you haven't seen it. And Dave, you put this on our schedule, so why don't you tell us why you threw it on there?
Yes, well, both Scott and I have selected a lot of movies that we grew up with. You know,
We've been on a run lately.
We have, yes. And this is another one of those. When my parents would go out with their friends on Saturday night, they'd most often leave us with our grandparents since they lived nearby. Or the other most oft-used option was our Aunt Brenda and her friend Beth, who were about 21 years old at the time. Sometimes Aunt Brenda was busy, so Beth would take care of us herself, and when that happened, it was always great because she'd take us to the video store and buy us soda and, you know, PB Maxes, and it was everything you wanted as a kid.
You could rent whatever you wanted?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, absolutely. We had R-rated privileges.
Carte blanche at
Yes.
the video store.
Exactly. And she'd let us hang out of her. She drove this Monte Carlo, and we got to like hang out the windows, and everything. And we'd listen to Midnight Blue.
Dude.
Yeah, it was great.
I remember those days.
Yes.
They were amazing.
Right? And, obviously one of these trips to the store was this movie. And shortly after that, we had one of those weekends where the cable provider gave us free HBO. And, now we had
Nice.
an extended play Maxell tape with this movie and 3 others, and
Oh, yeah.
they just got played to death. And obviously, in addition to special meaning, because I associate it with good times as a kid, it's still a movie that I enjoy as an adult. And I wanted to talk about it. So here we are.
I would argue that it's even a better film as an adult.
Okay,
Because
yes.
you can understand a lot more about it.
I know, yeah. There was a lot of both humor and just, not even just references, just things you don't get when you're a kid.
Right, because it's a coming-of-age tale, right?
Yeah.
It's these kids going on a journey of growth and that you do in your formative years, right?
Right.
And you don't realize it's happening while it's happening. You're just thinking, hey, we're going to have a freaking awesome adventure. Let's go.
I know.
But now you're struggling with all your emotional trauma, and you're dealing with becoming an adult, and all these things that kids don't think about.
Right.
And whether you're dealing with them or not, they are. And that's displayed wonderfully in this movie.
Yes, and a few different times on our show, I think I've brought up something that was in the feature on this DVD, in which Rob Reiner talked about casting when you're working with children.
Yeah.
And how, his method has always been he tries to cast actors whose personalities are pretty close to the characters they're playing, because they're not, even if they're really gifted, they don't actually have the craft yet. So, you have to not have it be such a burden for them to do this job. And so that takes a while, because you then have to actually find somebody. You have to find a Vern Tessio.
Yeah.
And Will Wheaton is there must have been 1,000 guys who walked in to read for this, including River Phoenix, who read for Gordy LaChance, and it just wasn't right until he found, the most doe-like sensitive boy.
Yeah.
And sure enough, there's Will Wheaton,
Yeah.
And then finding a Chris Chambers and a Teddy Duchamp, that's tough too,
Yeah, the casting was perfect for this. This movie might have some of the best kid performances ever given in it.
Yes, one in particular, River Phoenix, obviously, he was just...
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
He has the best scenes in the movie.
I know.
He gives the best performance in the movie.
He's absolute dynamite,
Yeah.
And we'll get there, I know. It's obviously a very sad... Anytime you watch a movie with River Phoenix now, it's very sad.
Yeah, on that featurette they even mention it, because on my DVD they have that.
Okay,
And
yeah.
everyone's talking about how sad it is of what happened to him, how he died and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's hard for them to even watch this movie.
Right.
Because there's some parallels between his real life and the character he's playing here,
I
too.
know.
So it's really tough.
Yes.
But yeah, River Phoenix talent taken way too soon from us.
No doubt.
Definitely
Yep.
would have had a long and prosperous career.
He'd be in the middle of a great career right now.
He'd be getting DiCaprio's roles and
Yeah.
everything.
I know.
If he wanted them.
Right.
Who knows what he would have done.
That's true, because
Yeah.
he had a real rich life outside of acting. The way he grew up with just him and his parents in a
Yeah.
VW bus, and they lived on a hippie commune, and he's been a vegetarian since day one. It's really an unusual way to live.
Yeah. You see the way Joaquin Phoenix
Yes.
acts and makes choices. They're very
Right.
similar, I'm sure.
Yes.
Well, you want to get into the movie, Dave?
Let's do it,
This is a
yes.
fantastic movie. I'm so amped to talk about it.
Right.
The movie opens up with a guy sitting in a car. There's a newspaper, and it's about someone who died. We don't know who it is yet. It says Chris Chambers. And then he sees a bunch of kids riding a bike, and he flashbacks to when he was a kid.
Right.
It's Richard Dreyfuss, actually, sitting in this car, everybody.
Yes. And it's cool, too, because it's because this is a Stephen King adaptation, if you're a Stephen King fan, you get to, I guess, notice all the Stephen King stuff, and there's been an international scout in so many of his stories. That's just a car he likes.
Yeah.
And to see Richard Dreyfuss as the adult Gordy LaChance, sitting in the international scout and looking out at the expansive, field there, and then seeing
Yeah.
the kids drive by on their bikes, it's just we know we're watching Stand By Me, so we know what this moment means.
Yep. And the voiceover kicks in, and he says, "I was 12 going on 13 the first time I saw a dead human being." And that's a way to set up a movie, everybody.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
It's just like Goodfellas. I mean, that
Right.
that opening line grabs you.
Yes, yes. It sets the table for you, and you know what you're in for. And like you see then like Will Wheaton as Gordy LaChance, now in 1959, walking down the street, and like Richard Dreyfuss's narration is throughout the film, and
Yeah.
it punctuates where it needs to, and then it holds back where it doesn't need to be. It's about I like whenever you use narration, like whether it's voiceover of the character in present day or them looking back. You have to like pick your spots, obviously.
Yeah, I think it's used very well in every instance, actually.
Yes.
So great job with that. But yeah, we get to meet all the kids here, right? The group of friends, the gang, they call themselves. Gordy LaChance is played by Will Wheaton. He's one of our main kids here. He's the doe-eyed kid you talked about. He's actually very smart compared to the other three guys in the gang. He's
Right.
like straight A kid. He's going to go on to college and be like a super successful person. And then you've got River Phoenix, who plays Chris Chambers. He's got a family legacy, let's say, of bad apples.
Yes, he is kid brother to Eyeball Chambers, who's one of the worst kids in town.
Yeah, second worst kid in town. Yeah, and his dad is horrible, and
Right.
just like everything about him is horrible, and he believes that about himself because of this.
Yes.
And then the other kid is Teddy, played by Corey Feldman. He's the craziest of the group. He's unfortunately been abused very badly by his father.
Right.
His main feature is his ear is burnt off because his father, in a drunken rage, put his head against the stove.
And like we hear this from Richard Dreyfuss's narration, him just like talking about this as Teddy is goofing off when they're playing cards, and
Yeah.
like they're smoking cigarettes, and he's laughing really hard and blowing smoke in everybody's face, and it's just like all kids who were abused at home, and then they somehow manage to like not take that with them.
Yeah,
How do they do it? I don't know.
yeah, it's got to be tough,
Right.
And the three of them are in this treehouse, like smoking
Yes.
and playing,
Yes.
or gambling. Like they're not the best kids, you would say. You
That's
could say
true.
they're quote unquote bad kids, but they're not fully bad yet, right?
Right.
It's kind of like John Boyega in Attack the Block. Like you could say he's a quote unquote bad kid, but he hasn't like crested over the hill yet.
That's true. He's a bad kid in training, and like he'll end up being. They're going to end up in prison someday, if on this trajectory.
Exactly. They have to do something
Yes.
about it. And right now, they don't care. They're having a good time,
Right.
and they like what they're doing.
Yeah.
Even Gordy, he's like the straight A kid, but he's hanging out with them because they're his friends, and he's doing bad things. He's being influenced by them.
Yeah, I mean, we see Gordy smoke while they're in the, like,
Right.
he's not totally clean himself.
No, he's not. Just because he's smart doesn't mean he's good.
Right.
A good person, quote unquote.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. And this is where we meet our fourth kid, Vern, played by Jerry O'Connell, everybody. He's the totally oblivious fat kid, right? Who he doesn't read the room correctly ever.
Right.
And he runs his mouth constantly. So he comes in and he tells everybody, hey, you want to see a dead body? And he tells a story about how he overheard these two older kids who are in Eyeball and Ace's gang saying that they found this dead body, this missing kid.
Yes, and the two older kids, like they flash back to Vern being underneath his porch at his house where he's trying to find his buried jar of pennies that he like made himself a treasure map to like so he could know where they were, and then his mom threw out a bunch of his stuff while she was cleaning his room, and so now he's been like spent the last 4 years trying to find this stuff.
Yeah, I love when they show him under there. There's holes everywhere.
Yes.
There's like dozens of holes.
I mean, because it's like this big, expansive wraparound porch, and just like holes everywhere. And he, at one point, then he hears his brother Billy, played by Casey Zamasco.
Yeah.
And then his friend Charlie Hogan, played by Gary Riley. He played Dave in Summer School.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're talking about how they found the body of Ray Brower. They know where it is. They know where he's at. And the reason they do is because they had stolen a car and had driven out there. And they don't want Charlie. Billy doesn't want Charlie to say anything because then that would give away that they had, like, hey, what were you guys doing out there?
Right.
The cops are going to ask too many questions because they know that these guys don't have a car, and so they're like, well, how'd you make it out there? Well, it would give away everything.
Right.
So they're gonna keep quiet about it. Well, now Vern knows.
Yeah.
And so the adventure begins.
Yeah. This guy has to run his mouth. And he's got to tell his friends. Part of me thinks, like, he's trying to be cool, right?
Yeah.
That's what kids do. Like, hey, guys, guess what?
Right.
This will get him more points with the gang. Even though he's part of the crew. And you see a lot of their interaction, like, he's accepted 100%. He's part of the team.
Of course.
But you can tell he's not exactly the same as the other three.
I mean, like, later on when Chris is telling the story about, the milk money, he says, everybody knew. Even Vern knew, I think. Yes. I mean, it's like a weird thing to say about one of, like, your close friends, but it's like, yeah, Vern is not on our level.
Yeah, even that idiot knows.
Yes.
Or when he's telling the story about the Barfarama, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's not concerned with the ending. He wants to know, like, if he had to pay to get into the pie eating contest.
That's probably my favorite Vern
It's like,
moment.
how dense are you?
Did he have to pay to get into the contest? That's the great
And he goes,
Vern
no.
question. No,
they just let him in. He goes, oh, yeah, great story. That's what everything hinged on.
Yes, exactly.
It's a great character moment.
Yes.
Like, the movie is just chock full of incredible character moments.
Of course.
It's amazing. And so, yeah, we have our motivation here.
Uh-huh.
We're ready to go on our adventure.
Yes, and we get a slice of like Gordy's home life here, because we go back and we hear Richard Dreyfuss again on the narration talking about how, like, about 4 months ago, Gordy's older brother Dennis had died in a car accident.
Yeah.
And they get a flashback, and we see the parents in the garden, like, the mom's hanging clothes, and the dad is like, like trying to tend to the rose bushes and stuff, and they're doing it without a lot of heart, and they're obviously still really depressed.
Yeah.
And this just hangs over everything at the house because Dennis was like everybody's, not just the parents' favorite. He was the favorite of the town. He was America's son.
Yeah. He was All-American football player and great looking. I mean, it's John Cusack, everybody.
And,
so, he was just the number one guy.
I mean, when they do the flashback and it's like sepia with, like, John Cusack walks in. Hey, Gordy. Hey. I got this something for you. He puts on the Yankee. He goes, well, no, this is your Yankee cap. No, that's your Yankee cap. And his whole thing of, like, how many fish we're going to catch with that? Brazilian fish. And he's got, like, just that granite jaw and everything. And I'm like, man, this is John Cusack at age 18. Yep. Fantastic.
Yep. Who wouldn't love this guy, right?
That's right.
I mean, his dad obviously loves him.
Man, Marshall Bell is just like in the tank, for John Cusack.
Yeah, and he wants nothing to do with Gordy. Even, like, there's a dinner flashback also, and Marshall Bell is just talking about, like, football. You got to be there. And the wife tries to say something. He's like, he can't be thinking about girls. He's got to think about the game. And then John Cusack diverts the question or whatever, and, like, hey, Gordy wrote a great story, like, trying to change the subject.
Right.
And the Marshall Bell's just like, no, I don't care, about his story.
When Marshall Bell, like, it's one thing to, like, change your whole demeanor, but his voice even changes too.
Yeah.
Like he's hey, listen, Dennis, when you're out there on the field tomorrow, he's friendly and smiling, and then the wife says something, and his whole face just drops. Now, what did I tell you about talking about girls?
Yeah.
And I'm like, whoa.
He turns into Kuato right away, dude. He, like, comes at him.
That's right, dude.
No, Kuato, I'd take him over this guy any day,
Absolutely.
though, man.
You know what? You know who else I'd take is like the sadistic gym teacher in Nightmare on Elm Street 2.
Yeah,
dude. Like, that's a better man.
I forget his name, but
Yes.
he gets, like, whipped to death in the showers.
That's right.
He's a nicer guy than Mr. LaChance.
He's way better than Mr. LaChance, no question.
Yes, he is. But yeah, seeing the flashbacks, it just breaks your heart for Gordy. You know, he's got to play second fiddle to his brother while he's alive, and now he's just here as this afterthought he's told everybody that it should have been him.
Right.
That's what his father tells him. How do you say that to somebody? How do you say that to your son?
So I take that as that's how Gordy perceived it. I don't know that, like, Marshall Bell actually says that to him.
Oh, okay. I thought he did. Maybe
so he does.
Maybe I'm misremembering.
It happens
that.
in the dream. Like he looks at him and says, "It should have been
okay."
you, Gordy.
Yes, it's the dream sequence. So
Right.
yeah, you're right.
I mean, but that's how Gordy feels. I mean,
I could see him actually saying it.
I could,
because this
too.
guy's that bad.
Yeah, he is a bad guy. If you said that to your son, I hope that the son never returns after he grows up.
Yeah.
If you were to like be that cold and cruel, I mean, there's other people in this movie, unseen characters who are way worse than him, obviously, and then there's people who are just like who are there who are worse than him.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's got it rough at home. Everyone's got it rough at home.
Yes.
So. I don't know about Vern. Like, it doesn't sound like it, but his brother's in the other gang, and
yeah, his brother
so
is is Billy, and he's
yeah,
another guy who likes to have a good time, and make trouble for everybody else in town.
yeah. So when they're getting ready to leave, Chris shows Gordy like, "Hey, look, I brought a gun with us." So this sets up the gun, right?
It's a 45.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a big ass gun.
When Will Wheaton's holding it, it looks like he's gonna like drop forward because of the weight,
And he
can barely hold it.
He would. There's no way this kid at that size could fire that weapon.
Yeah.
It's just you couldn't do it.
Yeah. So he accidentally, he shoots it on purpose because he doesn't thinks it's loaded.
Right.
Which Chris lied about because obviously it is, and it goes off, and they run away, and they're joking about it, and Will Wheaton's really upset about it, actually.
Yeah.
Like, you lied to me about it.
Right.
Makes him pinky swear and all this. So you get to see their relationship. These two have a deeper relationship than any other relationship in the whole group.
Yeah, in the narration, like when Gordy is introducing everybody, he says, Chris Chambers was the leader of our gang and my best friend.
Yep.
He really obviously, it's not just that he's his best friend. He really looks up to him. That's obvious.
Yeah.
And he's really hurt when the gun goes off and Chris is laughing about it.
Yeah.
And it's he feels like like Chris really put one over him, and he did. Even though I don't think that Chris knew it was loaded. I think he probably took the clip out, but he didn't. That
The one in the chamber.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's what happened.
Right.
Because he really tells him, he's like, honestly, I didn't. I swear on my mother, like
Yes.
pinky swear, all that. I didn't know.
In the annals of my mom getting pissed off when she watches a movie with us, this was another moment when Gordy says, "You swear? Yeah. On your mother's name? Yes. Even if she goes to hell because you lied." I mean, the stakes are high, everybody.
Really high.
Damnation for your mother? Yeah. You better be telling the truth.
Oh, man. Yeah, so he better be. Yes. I think he is.
Yes.
And then at this point, they bump into Ace and Eyeball Chambers. They're coming out of the convenience store or whatever, and they literally bump into each other. And then Ace steals Gordy's Yankees hat that Denny had given him before he died.
It's a fantastic hat. It's one of the new era caps that they made. They started in the 1940s, and this is the real deal. I'm pretty sure this is a real vintage 1959 Yankee cap.
It looks good.
Yes.
I mean, Dave is a hat guy, everybody. Like, he loves these baseball hats, so
Right.
he knows his stuff.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, he takes it and is like, no, it's mine now, and won't let him have it back.
Right. And it's a really shit move for a lot of reasons. And what gets you kind of know right now, they've already mentioned Eyeball Chambers. So this kid that's with Ace is Eyeball.
Yeah, he's got that little scar on his eyeball.
Yeah. And Ace, played by Kiefer Sutherland, in the first thing I ever saw him in.
Me too, probably.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. He is like he's the town shithead. He's like the toughest guy, and he bullies the younger kids, and he probably is got he's bad.
Yeah,
he's bad news.
He's got a police record, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
exactly.
Like, he's the leader of the older kid gang.
Right.
We talked about the kids who stole the car and found the body. He probably told them to steal that car.
Yes.
Like,
Right.
This is the worst guy in town.
Yeah, right.
So you don't want to be on his bad side.
Right. And it's the 50s, and they're greasers, and that's just how it is.
Yeah, his hair is awesome, and
Yes.
he looks awesome, and he's very soft-spoken. Ace is quite intimidating.
Mm-hmm. I was quite scared of him as a kid. I remember just thinking, "Oh my God,
Yeah.
this guy would kill me,"
Yeah.
And the other kids are too, obviously, in the movie. But Chris stands up to him after he steals Gordy's hat. He says, "You're a real asshole, you know that?" And Ace,
tells him to take it back.
Exactly. And he doesn't just like grab him right away. He goes, "Ooh, your brother's not very polite, eyeball," you know? And he just walks up to him, and then he puts him on the ground, and he's going to threaten and burn him with cigarettes. And finally Chris says he takes it back, and, you know, Ace pulls him up and goes, "Okay, I feel a lot better about this."
Yeah.
Now, don't you? And the hat is now gone.
Yep.
And, dude, okay, on the Robin Hood episode, I mentioned Alan Rickman's strut that he does after he murders Michael Wincott, you know?
Yes.
This scene is, I think, another fun instance of an actor playing a villain and really feeling themselves. After Ace finishes the exchange with Gordy and Chris, Bradley Gregg, as Eyeball, says, "See you later, girls." And he then does this little pirouette, and with the Yankee cap, like, placed just so on his greasy duck-ass hair, he struts away from the pool hall, even, like, shaking his hips a little as he tries to catch back up with Ace.
Yeah.
It is awesome.
It's amazing. It's a great introduction for these guys.
Yeah,
like,
right.
We, as an audience, hate them to the core.
Yes.
Man, like, this movie, I can't say anything bad about this movie, Dave. Like, every single aspect of the technical, the acting,
yeah,
the direct, every single thing about this is amazing.
I am totally with you. I cannot say anything bad about it either. I mean, like, I just love every frame, every second of it. Yeah.
Yep. So now we hate these guys, and we've set up a lot of stakes for later. Like,
right.
Gordy, we know his motivation for hating these guys. We know Chris's motivation now because we've seen them. We know his brother's an asshole.
Yep.
And we know what's going on. So it really helps with a lot of things that come later in the film.
Right.
Really raising the stakes for him. So they meet up with the other guys now. They all got their sleeping bags. They told their parents, like, "I'm going to sleep at your house and you're going to sleep over here. And then we're going to go to the race tomorrow. And then we'll be back in 2 days and no one will know." You know, that's their plan.
It's a good plan.
You know, that's your little kid plan. You know, everybody did that, right?
Sure, right.
So they take the train tracks, and they're going to follow those. I think they say it's 10 miles, maybe 20 miles. They don't know.
They say, like, at one point, Chris is like, "It's about 20 miles. What do you think, Gordy?" And Gordy goes, "Yeah, it could be 30. 30 miles?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a hell of a journey.
And these kids have no idea what they're getting into, right?
Right.
Like, just that alone, there's a 10-mile difference between how far they think they're going.
That's big.
Like, these guys are kids still.
Yeah.
And they're getting in way over their heads.
Yeah, because they've said that, like, you know, this is going into Labor Day weekend, and junior high starts, like, next week.
Yeah.
So they're going into 7th grade. These are 12-year-olds.
Yep. So they follow the track. They realize no one brought food.
Yes.
Which is kind of funny. And everyone points fingers like, "Well, I thought you were bringing it. I thought you would bring it." But no one brought them.
And Vern brought a comb, you know, because they had this fantasy that they're going to be on TV, you know, because of their heroic find.
Yeah.
And yeah, he brought a comb for everybody else, and that's what he did instead of bringing food.
I love it, too. I think that's great for Vern. Because they make fun of, like, "You don't even have any hair." Because he's kind of a buzz cut.
He's got a
kind
crew
of.
cut, right.
And he's like, "Well, I brought it for you guys."
Yes.
And it's like, man, Vern's a real sweet kid, man.
He is. Yeah. He legitimately did this for his friends.
Yeah.
You know.
Great
By the
guy.
way, and that's the other thing, too, about, like, hair in the 1950s. Those were your choices.
Yeah.
You
Crew
know.
cut or a duck butt.
Exactly. You had a pompadour or this thing or flat top. That sucks.
Not many choices, man. Thank God the 60s came.
I know, exactly. People started to have style, you know.
So they're walking down the track, and a train starts to come, and Teddy doesn't leave the track.
Man.
Corey Feldman stands there. It's like, "I'm going to do a train dodge." And he's waiting, and the train's coming. Everyone's yelling at him to get off the track. And ultimately, like, a few seconds, like, not, like, immediately, but, like, 10 seconds before the train comes, probably, Chris pulls him, like, "Get out of here."
Right.
And they started arguing. And Teddy is really pissed that he took him off the track.
I've been trying to think if I ever had a friend who was this nuts, you know, who would do what Teddy tried to do here.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever did. I mean, I had some friends. We jumped off cliffs, and, you know, we had like that kind of thing, and that was dumb too, obviously. But it was all of us doing it. It wasn't one guy who was like completely, you know, like suicidal all the time, you know.
Yeah.
Luckily. And I think that I'd like to think that if I did have that friend, I would have been Chris Chambers, you know.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Because this is the first moment of like River Phoenix really flexing, you know, like being like showing his acting chops, because like it's a very powerful emotional scene, and Corey Feldman actually matches him somewhat here.
Yeah,
you know, Corey Feldman had the goods too when they were kids.
Yeah, I've never disliked his performances, and I think they're going head to head here, yelling at each other while that train's going by is just wonderful. And the filmmaking's great too, because the train like is whizzing by, and then just how do you get this shot, right? It's like perfectly timed with the train leaving as he's yelling like, "You're gonna kill yourself!"
Right,
and that like punctuates the end of the argument. You know,
I know,
like,
and then like the dialogue that's drowned out by the passing train.
Yeah,
you know, really well done.
It's awesome. It shows a lot of Corey Feldman's character too, right? Like he is suicidal to a point, and we learn later like his father has PTSD from being in the war, World War II, stormed the beach at Normandy.
That's right.
And he takes it out on Teddy. We already know about his ear injury, plus probably countless others.
I mean, yeah, the one that everybody knows, everybody in town seems to know about, is what he did to him with the ears. But yeah, who knows what other acts of abuse have been visited upon him?
Oh, yeah. Unimaginable stuff, I'm sure. So this, I mean, it's great. It sets up a lot of character stuff. It sets up the train being a threat later.
Yes.
Like, this is so good, everybody.
Right, it's awesome, yep.
And they continue the journey now, and they're friends again, right? They're all just talking and joking again and walking. And I love that about kids. You know, you can hate someone 1 minute and then be best buds again the next minute. Like, you kind of let it go. And that's what these guys do. So they go to get food because they need food, and they have to cut through the junkyard. And I really like the junkyard.
Yeah.
You get some good stuff here. You get to hear about how there's a scary junkyard guy and a scary dog named Chopper who will sick balls.
Yes, they've all been told that this Chopper sicks your balls and like bites them off. And like it's such a dumb kid, you know, story that, you know, like I think you and I have probably exchanged stupid stories that, you know, like that went on with like our friend groups when we were kids. Like sometimes you just like full on lie about something that you say that you saw something that you definitely didn't, you know, just to, and you're kind of swept up in it and you almost don't even know you're lying. It's just, you know, we're making believe right now, and let's get scared. And someone claims that Chopper bit someone's testicles off, so that now is common knowledge in the town. Yep.
And there's a threat now, I guess, to them, but they're not acting like it. They're in that junkyard just playing around, racing each other, sitting under this hood of a car, you know, waiting to get the food that Gordy's going to buy. Like, they're not too worried about it.
Yes, they don't seem like overly, you know, anxious and everything. It's just that like they know that like the hours are 4 to 8 every day, so it's not 4 yet. But yeah, they decide to flip for who has to go get the food, and Gordy loses, you know. Yeah. And there's one bit of important stuff with the coin toss is that like Vern, we find out, is very superstitious, and we find out what a goocher is. It's 4 tails. A moon is all heads, and both of those things are something you don't want. Yeah. But yeah, when they flip again, Gordy's the odd man out. He has to go get it. And this is the moment too of like, you know, you mentioned how you just, you know, you love everything about this movie, and one other part of it I really enjoy is as kind of witty as the script is, and as sophisticated as the young boys' senses of humor are, there are moments where they say kid stuff.
Oh yeah.
When you're 12 years old, you do a lot of swearing. Yep. You know, you also mostly know what sex is, you know, mostly. Yeah. But you're also still a kid, and sometimes you do lame insults when you're mad, you know. Yes. And in this scene is a good example of that, where like they do the I don't shut up, I grow up, and when I look at you, I throw up. And then like Gordy says, his comeback is, and then your mother goes around the corner and she licks it up. That's a gross thing to say, and it's really stupid too.
It is,
you know.
And but I love that it's a kid thing.
Yes, it's something I heard so many. I delivered so many of those lines when I was a kid.
Yeah, and the voiceover comes in too, saying like, it was important to always try to say the grossest thing you could. You know, so he says that like you had to one up them.
Of course,
you know?
Right?
Yeah, that was the game.
Finding new and interesting ways to insult a friend's mother was always, you know, in high regard.
Yep, definitely. So he goes and gets the food, and this is where we get that dinner flashback we talked about for Gordy. Because the guy working there is basically saying, hey, aren't you Denny's brother? You know, real tragedy, you know? And it brings on the flashback. And then he says, well, do you play football? No. And he goes, well, what do you do? And I think what does he say? He says, I don't know.
He says, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is great, actually.
Because imagine him trying to tell this guy that I'm an aspiring writer.
Yeah.
You think Mr. Charlow is going to be impressed by that? He just marveled for, what we see in the movie is just a little bit, but I'm sure it went on for 15 minutes, him talking about, like, I remember when he was all conference, quarterback he played, Father God and Sonny Jesus.
Yeah.
Which is my favorite Stephen King turn of phrase.
Yep.
It's just fantastic. And he's just thinking about, like, Denny LaChance's arm talent. Still, all this time later.
Yep. Can't let it go.
Right.
And I don't think he's trying to insult Gordy at all,
Right.
But saying this stuff about his brother, and then like the way he turns on him at the end, like, well, what do you do?
Right.
Like, that's just horrible. You can't do that to a kid, man.
No, you cannot.
And that's probably what happens to everyone. Maybe they think Gordy like loves hearing about his brother being amazing, so everyone in town is talking to him about it. But I get the sense that he's tired of hearing about this. Because his dad was always doing that stuff.
Yeah.
And no one ever talks about him.
My first instinct, if I knew a 12-year-old kid whose sibling had died, I would not ask them about it.
Yes, maybe that's a good idea.
Right.
Keep your mouth shut.
Yes. I certainly wouldn't marvel about their accomplishments.
Yeah.
Well,
he's a celebrity, I guess. So
Denny
you got to
LaChance
talk about it.
Yeah, of course, right.
Yeah. Aren't you Madonna's brother? Madonna. Yeah. So he has the food and he leaves. He goes back to the junkyard and no one's there.
Yeah.
My initial thought is, oh, they left and they're playing a joke on him, right?
Right.
Or the junkyard keeper's here. We see the other three kids climbing the fence.
Yes.
And the guy's there and he's like, hey, what are you doing here, kid? And then he starts running. And then you hear, Cooper, sick that kid.
Chopper, sick the kid.
Oh, Cooper. My dad's dog is Cooper.
I see.
And he looks just as sweet as Cooper.
See, that's the thing. Is like when we finally see Chopper / Cooper. I was watching this with my wife, and when he gets to the fence, and it's just this like the dog.
Oh, he just lays there with
and he
like
just lays
paws
there
the
as
dirt,
and she goes, "Oh, look at Chopper." I was like, "Yeah,
Exactly.
He's a very cute dog,
right?" He could rip your balls off if he wanted to.
Every
sure.
dog could,
but he looks like he just wants to play.
Right. Every dog, like that
Yeah,
you
they
encounter.
could.
Yeah, they it's a thing. The only reason that they don't maul you is because they have chosen not to, because
Yes.
it's in their they're better creatures than us.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
Yes.
But yeah, it's great because when he says Chopper, sick that kid, a voiceover comes in while Will Wheaton's slow-mo running, and he says, of course he said sick that kid, but what I heard was Chopper, sick balls.
Uh-huh.
And you see him booking it.
I love Richard Dreyfuss is saying sick balls.
Yeah.
It just flows
Really
so well.
great.
Yeah.
Really great stuff.
Uh-huh.
And they escape and they're on the other side of the fence. And instead of running away, they taunt this junkyard owner. This
is like Teddy's worst moment of when he taunts the dog. I don't like the, hey, Chopper, bite shit, eat my ass, Chopper. Fuck you, Teddy.
Yeah.
I'm
glad he rips his shirt a little bit.
Yeah, Chopper.
He deserves it.
He does, yes. And Milo's like, Milo Pressman, the junkyard, hey, you quit teasing my dog. But then things take a turn.
Yeah. He starts teasing the guy.
Yep.
And then the guy reveals, hey, I know who you are. You're just that Looney's kid. And he starts insulting Teddy's dad.
Yeah.
Telling him he's crazy and he's locked up in that building and, with all the other crazies.
So, yeah, like it's the first thing he says to him is, you little foul-mouthed Looney's son.
Mm-hmm.
And Teddy, is laughing. And all of a sudden, he just stops. He goes, what'd you call me? And I know you. And he goes into it.
Yep.
Calls his dad that Looney up in Togus. And it's obviously very insulting and very cruel.
Yeah.
Especially since it seems like everybody in town, like we said, knows that this guy was really abusive. And, You would think that like he would just tell him, "Hey, I know your father's, and get out of here.
Yeah.
You're trespassing. You shouldn't be here. And if you don't get out of here right now, there's going to be trouble." But like to then personally insult, obviously a very troubled man. This is him acting on his worst instincts.
Yeah, it sucks, right?
It does.
He's reacting to the situation. He's
Right.
not really thinking about it. In the heat of the moment, people do these kinds of things. You know, they'll say nasty stuff.
Yeah.
Without thinking about it.
And like Teddy reacts, violently eventually because he threatens him. He says, "Don't say anything about my old man again, or I'll kill you." And the guy goes, "Loony, loony," and then you see Corey Feldman leap on the fence, and he starts screaming about he's going to rip his head off and shit down his neck and everything. And, yeah,
dude. And they all leave. Teddy starts to cry while this is happening too, and Chris and everyone like gather him and they walk away with him like in their arms like, "Come on, let's go." And Teddy's going with them, but he's kind of like holding back, like he wants to go fight this guy a little bit, but he's just like face down like towards the ground, crying his eyes out as they walk away because of what he's been forced to deal with. He's been reminded, my dad's been pretty horrible to me, and he's locked up and he's got issues that no one can help him with.
Yes.
And man, that is a really mean way to hurt somebody.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you come across a smart-ass 12-year-old who's really behaving badly, obviously you want to, put them in their place, and your first instinct is to, tell them off.
Yeah.
But, like, I would never do what Milo Pressman did.
Yeah. I do love how the scene shifts in tone so well.
Yeah.
It goes from this playful teasing, almost like, "Hey, we escaped, everybody cheer, yeah."
Right.
And then it goes into like, we're teasing the cute dog, and then it goes into this like really mean argument.
Yeah.
Almost comes to blows.
Mean-spirited too.
It really changes. It transitions so well between all of it.
Yes.
And then as they're leaving, like they're walking down the tracks and they're trying to console Teddy, and I love how everyone's doing that.
Yep.
Like even Vern is like, "Hey, that guy probably never even served in World War II or whatever. Like your dad did. He's a hero." Saying things like that to him. Like, Teddy, don't listen to that guy.
You think that pile of shit was at Normandy?
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So good.
Yep.
I just love how they're there for him, right?
Right.
The movie's called Stand By Me, right?
Yes.
These kids are there for each other.
Yeah, it's a really great way of them to bond. It also like kind of sets them up for like they understand that the journey that they're on to go find a dead body. Like I think Gordy says it. Maybe going to see a dead kid shouldn't be a party.
Yeah, that's right here because Teddy says, "I'm sorry if I'm spoiling everyone's good time."
Right.
And then Gordy says, "Maybe it shouldn't be a good time.
Right.
We're going to see a dead kid." And everyone kind of just sits there in the moment.
Yeah.
Like kind of thinking on that.
They understand.
As they keep walking. Like,
right.
Yeah. It's so good, dude.
It is, yes. So about the criticisms of the film and how we have just, very few. This is not a criticism, really. It's just an observation I have.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, like, okay, it's a Stephen King adaptation, and it's generally considered, like the most successful, even by him. I mean, he full on says it. This is my favorite thing.
Yeah.
My favorite movie that's ever been made from my work. The only thing I personally don't like about it is that they moved the setting from Maine to Oregon. And this particular scene, the Milo Pressman insulting Teddy scene, they mention that Teddy's dad lives at home because they referenced specific abuse that we've mentioned a couple times that was committed against Teddy. So if they're in Oregon, was the dad sent away to Togus and now he's out? Because like the way Pressman tells it, Mr. Duchamp is there right now because he's the only one of the fathers who isn't getting a call. I mean, as far as I know, this is the only important element of the story where them changing the setting had a significant effect because Togus is a known VA hospital in Maine.
Is it in Portland, Maine?
Well,
like, is this Portland, Oregon?
Yeah, it's Portland, Oregon.
So
this is Oregon. That's the thing. Is that he said I was living in a small town in Oregon called Castle Rock. Well, Castle Rock is the fictional Maine town that a lot of Stephen King's stuff is set in. But yeah, like we hear the radio station, from KLAM in Portland. It's like, yeah, there's a Portland, Maine. There's also a Portland, Oregon.
Yeah.
That's the weird thing. When you read the body, the novella, it's WLAM in Portland.
Ah, okay.
So yeah, it's like they moved it. I mean, you couldn't get more diametrically opposed states than Oregon and Maine,
Weird.
Yes.
See, I wouldn't have picked up on that. Like, I don't know where that facility is stationed or anything. So
right.
But yeah, that is so odd.
It is,
isn't it?
Right. Because I don't know why, other than that they shot it in Oregon. I'm not sure why they would change the setting to Oregon.
Yeah. I can see the guy saying Togus just because he knows it's a place.
Yeah.
And it's not literally where he's at, but it's symbolic of the loony bin, quote unquote,
of
that
course.
he's at.
Right.
But I doubt that's the case at all.
Right.
Wow, that's so interesting, Dave.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right.
And that's the only criticism.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody,
Yep.
watch this dang movie if you haven't.
Uh-huh.
I went to check the Academy Awards for this.
Yeah.
It was nominated for screenplay.
Yeah.
And that's it. I'm kind of shocked at that, actually.
Well, I think that because maybe the best acting in the movie is done by children, that could have been a big part of it.
Yeah.
It's rare for kids to get Academy Award nominations,
But, I mean, every other thing about the film is just as amazing. So.
Because Rob Reiner could have been Best Director.
Definitely could. It could have been Best Picture, even.
Yes, right.
I could have swore it was nominated for that, but I guess I remembered wrong.
It was just really critically acclaimed. It was a big hit, too. I mean, it was a big movie. But, yeah, it definitely deserved a little bit more Oscar run than it got.
Yeah, definitely did. So they keep going on their journey here, and they're walking down the track, and Teddy and Vern are like singing some song ahead of Chris and Gordy.
Mm-hmm.
And Chris and Gordy are having their own conversation, talking about how, when school starts, Gordy's going to be with a lot of like smart kids in class. He's not going to be with us because we're going to middle school now. We're not in the same class. We're going to have different classrooms and everything. And you're not going to want to hang out with us idiots and losers anymore. You're going to have better people to hang out with. And this starts a really good conversation between the two of them about, their friendship and how each of them think badly about themselves.
Yes.
Like Chris puts himself down because he's from this family and there's nothing he can do about it. I'm a bad kid. I can't change that. And Gordy says just because he's smart doesn't mean he can't hang out with these kids, and basically also says he's not good enough for people because of his insecurities with his father. So it gets really deep, this conversation. Right.
And at first when Chris brings up, that Gordy's going to enroll in college preparatory courses, like Gordy's like, I'm not going in there with all those pussies. Forget it. You know?
Yeah. And he tells him, you're talking like your dad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they kind of argue about it too, because he says, well, you're acting like my dad. He says that to Chris.
Oh, gee, thanks, Dad.
Yeah.
And River Phoenix, as Chris Chambers, has this great speech, where he says, I wish the fuck I was your dad. You wouldn't be walking around talking about taking these stupid shop courses if I was. And he says, kids lose everything unless there's somebody to look out for them. And if your parents are too fucked up to do it, then maybe I should.
Yeah.
God damn, that's
so
great.
good.
Yeah.
Just one of many amazing moments that he gives in the film.
And I think it was Will Wheaton talked about on the featurette about the casting of everybody and how like finding someone to play Chris Chambers would have been tough, but not only did they find him, like off camera, River Phoenix was the leader of their gang, and he was kind of a father figure to the other kids. Like they all looked to him for leadership and authority, and obviously, because he's the man.
Yeah, I mean, it really shows because they got together like weeks before to rehearse and do things together.
Rob Reiner did a Mike Lee thing with them.
They say Rob Reiner is one of the best actors, directors out there.
Right.
Because he was an actor and he understands it and he knows what needs to happen to get a performance.
Yes.
Like, he pushed these kids to get the performances out of them. I know there's a moment or two where he went like Kubrick on people a little bit.
Yeah, he did.
But apparently it was okay because the kids loved it. And afterwards they were like, thank you for doing that. And like, you really got the best out of me.
Yeah, he didn't like drive them to madness like
Right.
Stanley Kubrick did.
Exactly.
But,
He didn't do a Shelley Duvall on them.
No,
So,
right.
but yeah, it really shows on the camera, these performances.
Because like there are directors who don't like actors.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of them, who just flat out don't like them. And they're even good filmmakers, who have made excellent movies.
Yeah.
And they just plain, they let's just get this fucking acting out of the way,
Yeah.
And I
Overly concerned with like the technical aspects
Yes,
of it.
right.
And then, well, we just need you here because then we'll finish it later.
Yeah.
We got the green screens here. We're going to fix it now. Yeah.
the everything is fixed in post, and they'll get like the line readings they need and then cut it together later. And
Yeah.
you watch these
Just
movies that are
chop
just
it.
oh my gosh, I got such a splitting headache watching a certain film from a few years ago.
Yeah.
It was Bohemian Rhapsody.
I was going to ask,
Yes.
was it the like lunch scene?
Yes, it was.
Yes.
Holy
That's the
crap.
scene that won it an Oscar.
Best editing, everybody. I just like what?
It's like that scene is borderline epileptic.
I know.
And
you
how much
can't
cutting it
watch
adds.
it. Yeah.
Yes. But in this movie, there's lots of masters, right?
Right.
There's not tons of cutting things together.
And
all
for-
4 kids are there for a minute at a time.
I know.
In the scene together, reacting appropriately in the moment, in character.
Yeah, he really got they were obviously very committed to the roles, and they did a great job. They worked with him and everybody else so well, and they were obviously seasoned pros already, all 4 of them.
Yeah. Amazing stuff.
Yep.
And they keep going. They get to the bridge, Dave. I feel like this is one of the most famous scenes in the movie.
Oh, the trestle.
When they get to the trestle
Yeah.
where the train track is crossing the river.
Right.
At least I remember this vividly from when I was younger.
Oh, so do I.
Like, I remember this, and I remember Gordy's campfire story.
Yes.
Those were the 2 things I remembered the most as a child.
You're right. Those are probably this trestle thing, and yeah, Gordy's story later are 2 quite iconic scenes.
I can see why a kid would love those, too.
Oh, of
because
course.
this scene with the trestle is, all right, they're going to cross it because there's no way across the river, so they've got to go on the tracks.
And if they don't walk across the tracks here, they'll have to go like 5 miles out of the way and then come. Teddy says it's like 10 miles.
Literally.
Right.
Huge detour.
Yes. So if they do this, they can make it to the same spot really quickly, and they go across these train tracks, and like it's a highly dangerous thing to do.
Yeah.
It's about 100-foot drop, and one thing that they don't capture in the movie is like if you were a raging river like this,
Yeah.
it would be like a lot of rapids down there. And in addition to that, like just the rushing water, what kills you when you fall off a bridge or a trestle like this isn't you hitting the water. It's the rocks that you can't see.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're dead if you fall off this thing.
Yeah. If it's not deep enough
Yep.
or you get rushed into a boulder or something from the current,
Yep.
you're gone.
That's right.
And even just the impact from 100 feet, if you're not holding your breath right or hit the water right, like
Right.
you can get like a belly flop and then you can't breathe and then you're sucked under and then you're gone.
You're right.
It's so dangerous.
I didn't mean to diminish the impact of the fall. You're right.
Oh, well.
The fall is bad. I don't want to do it,
I love this when the comb falls out of Vern's pocket. Because Chris and Teddy are up ahead walking like at a quick pace, to get across.
Right.
And then Vern is next, and he's crawling on all 4s because he's afraid of the height, which I understand, but you got to move a little faster than this, dude.
I would not be walking behind him if I was Gordy.
Gordy must have been doing this out of friendship. Like, I'm going to stay with him so he's not scared out here alone.
Which is a very nice and sensitive thing.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry, Vern. You must get up. We can go as slow as you want, but you need to walk.
Exactly. And what do you know? A train comes.
Train! Yes.
Yes. And he makes Vern get up, and they start running.
At first, Vern starts crawling fast.
Yes, that's not going to work, Vern.
Dude, are you serious? Get up.
Get up. You're going to get cow-catchered into that river.
Oh, my God. Exactly. Yes. Come on now.
You're going to die either way. Run.
Yes. And Gordy even has to like pull him up physically because he's just clinging to the tracks
Yeah.
in fear. You know, we're gonna fall. Yeah, you're gonna fall, but we're gonna get crushed. You know, we got a chance if we run.
Yeah. And they run, and it's a very exciting, tense scene.
Yeah.
Because that train is getting closer and closer. And I like the special effects. You can tell it's not a real
Yes.
train. You know, it's like a rear screen thing or something.
Right.
And, but it looks good.
They use rear screen in one part of it, and then in another part they use like a not forced perspective exactly, but there's some camera tricks where it looks like the train is like right on Gordy's ass.
Yeah.
But it's actually about 600 feet away.
Yeah.
And they also like spliced in. Apparently, they had like stunt women wearing like Gordy and Vern clothes and gave them haircuts, and
Yeah.
and they just like they did the fall, I guess. And
You can kind of tell.
Yeah.
Like for a split second, you're
Right.
like, oh yeah, that's not them.
That's right. I saw a frame actually captured in one. It was like real obvious.
Yeah. But that's coming from a guy who's seen this movie 100 times.
Of course.
And I'm picking out little thingies like, oh yeah, I never noticed that. You know,
right.
the first time you're at the edge of your seat, like, come on, guys,
Oh
make
my
it.
God, I know. And when they cut back to Teddy and Chris, and they're like mouthing the words, like at one point they're just yelling, like, "Come on now, move your ass, come on, come on!" And then they go back again, and they're just like almost praying, "Come on, come on, come on," you know.
Yeah.
And like it's really intense. Like, these look. Two kids getting run over by a train. I mean, that's bad shit.
No, thank you.
You know?
So they get to the end, but they're not like safe yet, and they jump.
Right.
Like because they're not at like flat ground yet, but they're across the river. They take a leap right near the end, and they dodge the train. Teddy even says like that's the ultimate train dodge. Like at one point.
That's right.
But Chris and Teddy come and look down, and they're like down in the dirt, like in this little ravine where they fell and tumbled down.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, Vern is down there like crying. Like I love that. Teddy's like kind of like, or not Teddy, but Gordy is like kind of trying to get his bearings. Like whoa, whoa, whoa.
Right.
And Vern is just crying like a baby.
Because like that, it's about a 20-foot drop probably, you know, from where they end up.
They must have jumped down at least 10 feet and then
Yes.
rolled down another 20 or something.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's going to be like some jagged rocks on that hill
Oh, yeah.
too, you know. So they're going to be scuffed up full of road rash.
Yeah.
It's better than dying, but still,
Exactly. Yeah, but it's great, man.
Right.
It is such a wonderful scene.
Yep. And then they now like are in the forest clearing, and it's time to like make camp for the night. And they start doing like they're making hamburgers, I guess.
Are they burgers? It looks like they like got marshmallows.
So when in the book they're called pioneer drumsticks. They describe them more. It's like just a ball of meat on a stick.
Okay.
And you roast the outside of it, pretty much get a sear.
It's like ground beef in a circle.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you put your bun around it and just kind of like pull the stick out of it. And
Gotcha.
It's just like the rarest burger you've ever eaten.
It's a meat sphere.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So that's what they're cooking.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
And
Vern drops his in
Vern
the fire.
drops his in the fire like an asshole. I mean, God, it's
He
just,
gets it out though.
He fished it out, and it's like, can you imagine like just all, like the soot and ash all over it.
That's an Alton Brown special. That's how he cooks his steak, man. Right on the charcoal.
Dude, I've been watching Good Eats lately, actually.
It's the greatest.
What a
isn't
great
it?
show, yeah.
I fucking love it.
Yes.
But yes, so they're around the campfire, and they start doing what you do around the campfire, right?
Yeah.
Telling stories, joking around and stuff, and we get the pie eating contest story,
Let's
which
talk about
is
it.
amazing.
Yep.
Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah.
Yes, lead the way.
Well, so yeah, this is like Gordy. He wants to be a writer when he's older, and this is Chris asks him, "Hey, Gordy, why don't you tell us a story?" He's like, "Okay," and he starts telling him his latest composition, which is about it's a revenge story about this kid named Davy Hogan, aka Lardass.
Yeah.
He's a fat child, and he is made fun of by everyone in town. It's quite sad.
Yeah.
But it's played for laughs because, I'm even laughing while I'm talking about it because it's very funny in the movie. It
Yeah.
would be tragic and evil if this was going on in real life, but
Yes, and I think knowing that it's the ultimate revenge tale is like that's how he sets it up, right?
Yes.
Like it's very over the top, right?
Right.
Like at how mean and obvious everyone is to this kid. Like
Right.
normal people wouldn't do this, I don't think. Like people would be mean, but like the Elks Lodge wouldn't be making elephant sounds while he's walking across the stage, right?
No,
like,
no, exactly.
That wouldn't be
Yes.
happening.
Yes, this is a heightened, atmosphere. Yeah, I have been around, I have seen and experienced and been myself a fat person. No one, you're not just like made fun of on the street.
Yeah, not by everyone, including the mayor. Yes. Like when he comes up on the stage, the mayor's like, "All right, lardass." Davey.
Oh man, that is a great moment. Don't you listen to them, lardass. Oh, I mean, Davey.
Pretty good. But yeah, he's come up with this plan to get revenge on everyone. He entered the pie eating contest, and there's this one guy who's like the winner. I forget his name.
Bill Travis.
This guy with this huge Bruce Campbell chin. He's won 4 years in a row, and he tells Lardass, "You better not think you're gonna win."
Like he even trips him when he's introduced.
Yeah.
Because this guy's the favorite. He's like the Kobayashi of Castle Rock.
He's gonna get the gold medal.
Yep.
So they're all eating, and Lardass is eating all these pies, like way more than everyone else. And then Gordy reveals in the story that he wasn't just here to win. He had a plan. and it cuts to like right before the contest. He drinks a whole bottle of castor oil. It's an empty Jack Daniels bottle, really, that just has the word castor oil written on it.
It's a fifth of castor oil.
And he chugs it and then eats a raw egg.
It's so disgusting.
Yeah. And then it cuts to him eating more pies, and then Gordy mentions some kind of rumble starts to happen.
Because Lardass, while he was like, getting further and further into it, he started to imagine that he was like, eating disgusting stuff.
Oh yeah, like rat guts and
yep.
poop and just everything. like he says like cow turds and stuff,
right.
like little kid stuff like that. And you hear the rumble, and the crowd like hears it. Everyone hears his stomach starting to gurgle,
and he pushes back from the table. He starts to like stumble around a bit, and like you hear the lots of fart noises and like gurgling, and then it happens. And like before it happens, like the makeup on Lardass's face, like after he comes up from the pie, it's also very gross. Like the pie, the blueberry pie bits, and the all the gross crust and everything.
Oh yeah.
And then he opens his mouth, and like it's a jet stream of projectile purple vomit.
Oh, with the blueberries in it and everything. And it's straight into, I forget the guy's name.
Bill Travis.
Bill Travis's face. It's literally 4 pies worth of vomit. And a fifth of castor oil on this dude. And it causes a chain reaction.
Oh.
Then he vomits all over someone else. And then someone else vomits all over. And then the crowd starts vomiting. He even says, Mayor Grundy barfed all over his wife's tits. It's amazing. And he says that, Davey Hogan just sat there and what he created, a complete and total barfarama. And that's the end of the story.
Yes.
And it's an amazing ending.
It's awesome. And it's a big hit with the guys. They just love it.
Yeah.
And okay, I've mentioned before about how much I'm just tired of looking at people puke in movies. It's
yes, that's true.
Man, when it comes up, I'm just like, freaking cinema reflecting real life. God damn it, I hate vomit. I hate the act of vomiting. I know no one loves to do it, of course.
Oh my gosh,
it's the worst thing on earth. But like, I don't hate the barfarama. Probably because it's so fake,
Right. You can tell there's like a hose attached to his mouth. Like,
of course.
You don't see the hose, but you can just tell that that's what's happening.
Yes.
Like you said, it's heightened.
Right.
For real. It's not made to look real like a Judd Apatow film where they're barfing on people.
Oh my God, yeah. Can you imagine?
Like this is totally fake.
Right.
It's still nasty.
It's very gross, and it's a sick thing. It's a sick idea. But it's like I'm much more grossed out by Monty Python's Mr. Creosote sketch, than I am the Barfarama and Stand By Me, because that one is more like the Apatow version, where it's like tan colored and it's really disgusting.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Oh, dude.
But, yeah.
I can't stand barf.
No, it's gross.
I'll tell you what. It's the worst part about having kids. When they get sick and they don't make it to a trash can or toilet, and you got to clean that Persian rug, you got to clean that car. No, man, it is not good. In the middle of summertime, scrubbing your car out, yeah, not good.
Yeah, I remember my dad having to clean up my vomit from a car one time.
Oh, man.
Yeah,
you had a Barfarama in a car.
I did, and it was their fault. The thing is, it was the adult's fault.
Exactly.
Because oh man, they
were they calling you lard ass?
No, they weren't calling me lard ass. Thank God. I had a big I had a huge box sitting on my lap. And I had my grandpa right next to me, and I couldn't see anywhere. Okay. Like, I was sitting in the back seat, and I couldn't see out the windows, and I just got nauseous. And when we dropped my grandpa off at work, all of a sudden, it just came out of me.
You just had to.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, man. Oh, God. All right, but enough barf, I guess.
Yes.
Teddy says, then what happened? It's like, Teddy, seriously, that was the best ending you could have ever asked for. He just says he didn't like the ending, Maybe he goes home and shoots his father and joins the Texas Rangers, which says a lot more about Teddy than anyone else.
It's just exactly what Teddy's life, what he wants it to be. He went home and shot his father and then joined the Texas Rangers.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a hell of an addendum. I mean, it's like, imagine like it's 1, 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and then you see like a little, text along the bottom of this. Lard ass went home and shot his father.
Exactly. Yeah. No way. There's a reason Gordy's the writer.
That's right, exactly. Teddy wants a Universal Pictures ending all the time.
Yep.
Animal House crap.
Yep. Oh my God, yeah. And then you get more scenes, right, of them talking about like important stuff to the kids, if Goofy is a dog or not.
Yes.
Which is a famous thing in the movie, and I think it holds true to like what kids talk about. Talk about those kind of things. Yeah,
you could have like really long conversations about insignificant nonsense like that.
I think the voiceover says it's the kind of things you talk about until you meet girls.
Yes, right.
And then they also hear coyotes howling in the distance, which kind of freaks them all out.
Yeah, and it gets like really, really loud at one point because it's actually, it sounds like a pretty large wolf pack. I mean, like they're closing in.
Yeah, one of them gets real close.
Yes.
And so they all take watch, and I think this is one of the greatest parts of the movie because you get Chris and Gordy's scene, but you also get Vern's comedy scene, which I think is the funniest thing in the movie. Vern's standing by a tree holding a gun. The same gun from earlier, right? Uh-huh. This gigantic weight.
Yeah, this hand cannon.
And he's scared of every little sound. There's crickets in the soundtrack that play, and like every time it goes cricket, he like turns left, cricket, turn right, like points the gun.
Then a frog,
and then a frog turns right, and then he kind of sneaks around the tree, and we can't see him anymore. And you hear like a bird or something, and then the gun points out. Whoosh. It's so funny, dude.
It's Jerry O'Connell with physical comedy.
It's awesome.
Yeah, very good stuff.
Very good.
Yep.
But then we get what might be my favorite scene in the whole movie.
Yes.
Is Chris is taking watch, and he comes down, and this is where Gordy's having the dream about his father saying it should have been him, right?
Yep.
But Gordy wakes up, and Chris tells him to go back to sleep, but he doesn't. He stays up with him, and they have this amazing conversation.
Right.
About their place in the world.
Right. Chris had been suspended once because they said that he took the milk money. He was supposed to go around and collect everybody's, money at the school in the class, and then, like bring it over to, I guess, the principal or the teacher or whatever, but it went missing. And, they said, well, they never even asked me if I took it. And Gordy's like, well, did you take it? He's like, well, yeah, I took it. Everybody knew, but maybe I tried to give it back. And Gordy's like, what? He's like, yeah, maybe I tried. And maybe old lady Simons showed up, with a brand new skirt on, that Monday.
Yeah.
So obviously the teacher let Chris take the fall for the missing milk money. He did steal it, but then he tried to make things right. And instead of, like being proud of him for doing the right thing, she took advantage.
Yeah.
And he's just that no good Chambers kid. No one's ever going to care. Even if she does get caught, no one's going to believe his story over hers.
Right. He says, if you had done it and turned it in, it would have been fine.
Right.
But because it was me, this is what happened.
Right.
it's really like a class issue if you think about it.
Of course.
You know,
Yeah.
The people at the lower end are always going to get the shaft.
And Chris says, you think she would have tried that shit with one of those douchebags from up on The View?
Yeah.
And yeah, the class issue,
Yep.
And then River Phoenix has this powerful moment where he just, like, he looks like he's about to start crying, and he stops himself, and then it just happens.
Yeah.
It just, like, all comes out of him,
It just pours out.
Right.
And he's trying to talk still, and it's that kind of crying where you're talking, but you can't even really understand what they're saying.
Right.
And you can't even get out what you're trying to say. We hear him say, "I never thought a teacher," and it just becomes unintelligible
Right.
as he sobs.
Right.
It's a betrayal that no one should have to feel,
Of course.
especially as a child. A trusted adult has betrayed you in a horrible way.
And, in the behind-the-scenes thing, Rob Reiner talked about the scene and how he talked to River Phoenix about, like, the motivation of the character. And he just said, look, I just want you to think of a time that an adult betrayed you or cheated you somehow, let you down. You don't have to tell me what it was. Just think about that while you're, and that'll help you in the scene. And River Phoenix said, okay. And he never revealed what it was, but he must have had some memory, because we all do.
Yeah.
I don't remember specifically the first time I found out adults were fallible or whatever, but
Yeah.
like I'm sure it must have been significant, because I would have, I've been treated unfairly by an adult right now, and
Yeah.
that hurts.
Yeah. I don't remember the first time that happened to me either. I know
Yeah.
it did.
Yes.
And it was nowhere as massive as this instance.
Absolutely.
Like, this
Right.
is just egregious.
Yes.
Yeah. An unbelievable performance.
Yeah. I mean, he's
Yeah.
like, this would have been if they had given some kind of like acting nomination for the Academy Awards, it should have been River Phoenix, and it should have been for this scene.
Exactly. And in this scene, does Gordy also tell Chris that maybe he should take college courses with him?
That came earlier.
Okay,
and then
that leads into all this
exactly,
stuff.
yes. Yeah. What Gordy ends up doing is just kind of like, listening to him, and then at the end, like his one line is Chris looks up and he's still bawling. He says, "I guess I'm just a pussy, huh?"
Yeah.
And Gordy says, "No way, man." And he puts his arm around him.
Yeah. Oh, so good.
It's very powerful.
It is the best scene in the movie.
Yeah, of course. It's fantastic.
And we get a scene after this of the next morning. Gordy had woke up before the other kids, and he's reading a comic book or something on the train track. And a deer comes out and just stands there, and they stare at each other. This is really like a throwaway scene, kind of, right?
Yeah.
But they make a big deal out of it,
Right.
which is excellent. And, I mean, I don't really know. I don't have my thoughts formed completely on the meaning of it, but there's something here that's just wonderful. In the voiceover, Richard Dreyfuss says, I saw this deer, and I never told the kids, and I've never told anyone. As I write this is the first time I've ever mentioned it to anyone but myself.
Yes.
And I think there's just something so almost sacred about having these kind of things that just mean so much to you, that are just for you.
Well, as podcasters, we can't really take this tactic, but it's like when something happens that's very significant and you start talking about it, it loses its meaning. But that's what we do.
Yeah.
We can't just not talk about something and let it breathe. We have to use lots of flowery language to describe significant moments in our life.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's our lot. But if it was Gordy and he sees this deer and it's just this weird moment where a couple hours ago he was confronted with a class struggle and the inescapability for Chris of it, but then he sees this deer unspoiled, and he sees that there is beauty in the world.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the kind of thing that makes a film great, right?
Yeah.
Like I said, it's almost a throwaway scene, right? But it has so much meaning to it.
Of course, yeah. You could
someone could say, "Look, cut that out. What is that doing?"
Yeah. Right. And they'd, I guess, technically, practically be right, because it's like, okay, yeah, it's not the most significant thing, but it has some meaning, because we're sitting here talking. We've spent 2 minutes talking about it.
Exactly. And now we're making it mean less because we're talking about
That's
this,
true.
right?
I know.
Exactly.
It's come full circle. My God.
We're killing this deer, Dave.
Oh, God. Yeah.
But I just love this beautiful little moment.
Me too.
That comes right after this intensely emotional performance.
Right.
It's really nice.
And then we see the guys, like, like they get back on the journey again. And for the first time, I've seen this movie, I don't know how many times, I figured out what they were eating as they're walking up the tracks.
Is it blueberries?
It's just blueberries.
That's what I thought.
Some berries they found. And I remember thinking, like, I didn't pay close enough attention before, but you can see, like, there's blueberries all over their faces.
Yeah, like,
and they're carrying them in their shirts, kind of.
Yeah, Chris's shirt, he's got a white shirt on.
Yeah.
It's just, like, got a blue, like, stain on the front. Right. It's, like, purple stain.
Uh-huh.
It's great,
Right.
man. And I love how what Vern says here, like, Gordy, maybe you should have got some breakfast foods, like Twinkies. It's so funny.
Cherry-flavored Pez, root beer, and Twinkies is what he wanted for breakfast.
Yeah, breakfast foods, everybody.
I've had whatchamacallits for breakfast. It did happen,
Oh, I've eaten everything you can name for breakfast.
Of course, yeah.
Like, it works,
yes.
but I think some fresh blueberries might be a little healthier.
I know, right?
Those wild-picked blueberries, man? I'm there.
Yeah.
I would walk this track just to get those.
They look delicious, and the guys are, like, wolfing them down, so they were the best.
Oh, yeah, dude. That, like, burger ball they ate for dinner ain't cutting it. But, yeah, they try to take a shortcut here because the train kind of goes around again, and they're like, man, if we go around, that's going to take forever. Let's cut through these woods that are here, and that'll take us right where we need to go.
Uh-huh.
So that's what they do. And Vern is hesitant. We don't know what's in those woods, guys. Come on. And, of course, you go in, and there's a big puddle of water, and they're like, great, what do we do now? So they test it. They're going to cross it. It's very shallow. And, of course, it's not. They fall in, up to their necks in this water.
Yeah.
They're dunked in.
Man, it's just
It's a swamp.
Yeah, it looks like a swamp, too. I mean, just like the prop water they're in doesn't look, it's brackish.
They built the set in the woods.
Yes.
And I think Will Wheaton said that they built it in June, but they didn't shoot until August.
Wow.
So it was a real swamp at that point.
That's disgusting.
Yes.
Yeah.
They might have been real leeches if you ask me, but
I found out they were really excellent special effects.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah. What happens, everybody? They're in the water, roughhousing, playing around, and they get out of the water, and Gordy isn't having fun anymore, so he's walking out, and all three of the other kids gang up on him, right? And they put him in a headlock and all this stuff. Vern's like, I got you in the sleeper hold.
Uh-huh.
And Gordy says, Vern, there's something on your neck. Haha, I'm not falling for that one, Gordy. No, there's something on your neck. And it turns out to be a gigantic blood-sucking leech. And all the kids are covered in them. They strip down to their tighty-whities, and there's just dozens of leeches all over everyone's body. Apparently this really happened to Stephen King.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, once everything is calmed down and everything, Gordy, he looks around for a minute, and then he decides to look inside his underpants. And
yeah,
he snaps them shut. He looks over. He goes, "Oh, shit, Chris. Oh, shit, man." He reaches inside, and he's got a frickin' bloodsucker on his balls.
Yep.
And he pulls it off, and, like,
ooh.
Here's what leeches do, everybody. When you have them on you, you can get them off pretty quickly. Like, they pull off easily.
Yeah.
But if you just let them there, they will suck your blood until they burst.
Dang.
So, who knows how long that
must have been the first one on there.
I mean, yes.
Because when he pulls it off and, just has it between his finger and thumb and he has it dangling as he pulls it up, there's, blood on his fingers.
There's blood all over his hands.
Yeah. And he passes out from this. Vern's like, is he dead? Which is a funny Vern moment.
Of course.
No, he's not dead, you idiot. He's still breathing.
Yeah, they eventually he comes to, and like, you know, they're arguing about whether or not they should like abort the mission, you know?
Yeah.
And look, I think if something that traumatic happened to one of my friends, I'd probably feel the same way. But at the same time, it's like, well, we've come this far. We're past the halfway point at this time. I mean, you know, like, are we just gonna like turn around and go? I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah. And Gordy's kind of catatonic at this moment.
Yes.
He's like Cameron from Ferris Bueller,
He is,
you know?
very much. So
Just
he's in a
staring off.
Fugue state.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, and as they're arguing about what to do, he stands up and yells, "Stop it! I'm not going back."
Right.
And then they start walking. He walks off and they follow him, you
Yep.
know? And there's a great voiceover from Richard Dreyfuss here saying, at the time, I didn't know why I needed to see that body so badly.
Right.
I mean, I guess they all don't truly understand why they want to. There's just something about it, right? Like, I guess there's something intriguing, I guess, to them. A dead body, right? Wow. No one ever gets to see a dead body.
I think if I was on such a journey, I'd probably feel the same way. I'd be like, well, I've got to do this. I've got to see this through.
And
you know?
earlier they mentioned like their motivation was like, well, we'll be famous. We'll call the cops and report it and be on TV, you know?
Right, right.
And, you know, with that comes all the riches, I'm sure, right?
You know, honestly, okay.
We'll be heroes.
I know. In one of the cutaways to the other gang, you know, Eyeball and Ace and all the guys.
Yeah.
They're talking about it. And, okay, well, I guess I should set this part up. But, like, after we cut away from this scene, we go back to town. And, like, Charlie is spilling his guts to Ace.
Yeah.
You know, and he's like, you got to swear on your mother's good name. You're never going to tell anybody. And Ace is like, you got it, pal. And then we cut to Eyeball talking to this other dude.
Yeah, Billy.
Yes. Billy talking to Eyeball, and he's saying the same thing. And Eyeball and Ace tell the whole gang. They made that same swear that like that Chris did, but they totally disregarded it.
Yep.
And one of the other guys, I think his name's Vince, like is trying to convince Charlie and Billy because they don't want to go.
Yeah.
And he's like, he said something about like, we're gonna be on every radio and TV show in the country.
Yeah.
That's
so what?
That's that's a massive stretch.
Yeah.
You're not going to be on every radio and TV show in the country.
I guess this is like, okay, we weren't alive in the 50s, right?
No.
Let alone teenagers, right?
Yes, right.
Like, television had been around 15 years maybe at the most.
Right.
Maybe it's still so new, they're like, hey, we're going to be on TV, man. This is our big break, you know?
Well, you might get on TV. That's true. But, like...
the magic of TV, like... It's computers, man. Like, it'll fix everything.
Right. Is Walter Cronkite going to interview Ace on television?
Because they found a missing kid? Maybe not.
I don't think so.
Hey, was this a national headline? I don't think it was.
I guess that's really my point. Is that, like, you know, this is not national news, just the recovery of a... I mean, it's a bad... any kid dying, that's tragic. But, like a bunch of delinquents finding this guy, that's not going to be national news.
And I think that's like Charlie and Billy's concern. Like, hey, the cops are going to come looking at us, right?
Yeah.
Like they boosted the car and found it, right?
Right.
They're scared they're going to get caught for stealing a car. But really behind that, yeah, you guys are a known criminal gang, a criminal organization in this town.
That's true, I know.
They're going to say, hey, maybe these kids had something to do with it.
And that's a good instinct to have because they are known undesirables.
Yeah.
So the idea that we're just going to go there and like Ace has this cover story, but hey, no, we're just telling them we're going to go fishing. Ace doesn't go fishing.
Right, yeah.
You know... That's crap.
Yeah. I love it too because they're like, Ace, man, maybe we shouldn't go, you know? And he's like, yeah, you've stated your position clearly. Now let me state mine. Get in the fucking car. It is an amazing Kiefer Sutherland delivery. So good. I'm in that car immediately. All right, Ace.
I know. You got it, Ace. I'm in the car with you. And then like we cut to like we cut back another time when we come back to Ace and Charlie and Billy in Ace's car, and then Vince and Eyeball and the other guys are in the other car, and they're like, do you want to drag race down the freeway? And Vince thinks that he's got Ace because like Ace is in the left lane and it's a 2-lane highway and there's a log truck Final Destination style coming straight toward him. And they're like, oh my God, I got him. Ace, you don't got Ace.
Ace plays chicken with this truck, and he wins.
This log truck, like, has to ditch, has to jackknife off the road because this asshole wouldn't get out of the way.
Yeah.
With a death wish.
It's a terrifying scene, dude.
It is.
We've already seen how bad Ace is, right? Like, anytime he's on screen, anything he's doing, you hate this guy.
Right.
Now you see how really crazy he is. I'm going to die with these two other guys in the car.
Yeah.
Because I got to win this race.
I have to win a race, and I'm willing to put my life and two of my friends on the line, for a race that... A race.
Right.
It doesn't matter if there was a trophy at the end of it. Who doesn't? It's bullshit.
Exactly.
It's just like the worst kind of flex that young men do.
Yeah. And seeing them do this, when they confront the younger kids later, now you're really waiting for something bad to happen.
Right.
Because you know this guy's nuts.
Yeah, you know what Ace is capable of.
Yeah. He's almost burned you with a cigarette. Okay, that's bad.
Right.
No, he risked everything for this dumbass race.
That's right.
He doesn't care what he does to you guys. You little kids are dead.
Yep. He was also drinking during the race.
Yeah, they all had beers.
It was like... Whew.
Like 1959, everybody.
I mean, yeah, it was
Was it illegal at that point? It had
drinking
to have
and
been,
driving.
Right?
You know what?
Like I don't know what any of the laws were back then.
It was pretty much just Tombstone. It was a terrifying, lawless time.
Maybe that's why they moved it west. Out to Oregon a little bit.
Right.
It's a Wild West area. Jesus Christ. Yeah, a lawless town, a lawless frontier.
Yes.
Yeah, so we cut back to the boys. They find the road they're looking for, where the body's supposed to be.
Right.
And they spread out. Hey, let's look for it. And it only takes them a couple minutes to find it.
Right. The description from Billy and Charlie when Vern was under the porch was that, like, they found him right off the back Harlow Road. And when they get to Harlow, they see it, and they're like, okay, you guys take this side, we'll take this side. And yeah, it's right there. I mean, they find Ray Brower pretty quickly. And when they go over there, it's a obviously, the moment is handled very well. I mean, it's the four boys, and they're being very respectful about it, and they're understanding the gravity of the situation. And you get, like, Richard Dreyfuss's excellent narration about the train knocked
him out of his kids, like it knocked the life out of his body.
That's correct.
Something like
Yes,
that.
that's the one. Yep.
You said it's handled very well, and it is.
Right.
They're being respectful. They're not excited anymore. They're just there. You go to your first funeral, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the experience of that is like what's happening here. And Gordy says something about how, like, this kid wasn't asleep. He wasn't knocked out. He was dead.
Right.
And Chris, like, moves the branches away from his face, and you see a close-up of the dead kid.
Right.
And these kids are staring at him. I love how they just aren't really saying anything. Because what do you say?
Yeah. I mean, when I was 12 years old, if I found a dead body in the forest, I don't know what I would... Even if I was, like, seeking it out.
Yeah.
I don't know what I would have done,
Yeah.
And this is when also Gordy, like, he sits down, and the other guys are like, what's wrong with Gordy? And Chris is like, oh, no problem. I'll talk to him.
Yeah.
And Gordy has that moment of vulnerability that Chris had earlier. Now it's kind of Gordy's turn.
Yeah.
And he talks about how his dad hates him. And Chris is like, no, he doesn't. He just doesn't know you. He's like, no, he does. Oh, my God, he hates me.
Yeah.
And like, this is Will Wheaton's big scene. And he's great. He's really, like, it's so sad watching him just, like, break down crying. And
it really is.
He puts his head on Chris's shoulder, and, he's just, like, he's overcome with, because he talks about how he didn't cry at his brother's funeral and everything, and and how it should have been, and he actually thinks it should have been him, because his dad has drilled that idea into him.
Yeah.
It's very sad.
Yeah, and he lets him cry, and he tells him, you're going to be a great writer someday, and one day, if you're hard up for material, you'll write about us. And after a moment, he looks up and he's like, I guess I'd have to be pretty hard up, huh? Which he's kind of come back from, the moment he was caught in.
That moment of that line of, being hard up for material, and I guess it had to be pretty hard up. I didn't understand that when I was a kid. I didn't know what that meant at all.
Yeah.
It was completely just went right over my head.
Exactly. I love how the scene starts too, because he's sitting there alone, and Chris goes over to him, and Gordy says, "Why did you have to die?" And we don't have any context of what he's thinking at this moment. So it seems like he's talking about Ray Brower, right? The body that's sitting there. Why did he have to die? But no, he's talking about Denny, his brother. Why did you have to die?
Right.
And I just love how it almost tricks you about what he's talking about. Not really a trick, but the way it presents his feelings is kind of a surprise to us.
Yeah.
In this moment.
Yeah.
So it makes the scene even better. It's just awesome. Like you said, it's his moment to shine. It's
of course.
I'm not going to say it's as good as River Phoenix's moment, but it's a 1A and a 1B, right?
I agree. Yeah. I think River Phoenix, if I was just to judge them, if I was to judge the performances, I think River Phoenix is superior. But it's still a good moment for Will Wheaton. Yeah,
and after all this, what do you know? Ace and Eyeball show up.
Jesus, man.
It's time to get serious. A different kind of serious.
Yeah.
A threatening kind of serious.
It's just like they come down to where the boys are, and they left that afternoon and they're here to claim the body. And
right.
Our guys have been spending 2 days on this.
They drove for 20 minutes and now they're here.
Yep.
Yeah.
It sucks.
And the kids even say that hey, we've spent all weekend coming for this body.
Right.
Not that the older kids even give a shit, right?
No.
They're probably just thinking what? Hey,
yes.
That body's ours.
Right. Scram.
Yeah, we're going to get the fame, I guess.
Which is, we're going to be on every radio and TV show in the country, according to the Vince,
Yep. And so they won't give them the body, and they're cussing them out and everything. And, Ace doesn't like that. Someone says, hey, there's 4 of us and only 2 of you.
Teddy says it.
Yeah, and then Ace says something, and then the rest of the gang comes down. So now it's 8 on 4. 8 kids that are twice as tall as these other 4 kids.
It's just Charlie walks up and he starts taking it's Billy walks up, starts taking his belt off.
Yeah.
He's gonna beat up Vern with it.
Yeah. He's like, Vern, you were under that porch,
you goddamn
son
of a whore.
You son of a whore. It's his own mom.
Yeah, that's right. Good one, Billy.
Yep. So now they're outnumbered and they could die.
Yeah.
If these kids could take them out.
And Chris finds himself essentially standing there facing the gang on his own. They tell him to get out because they're taking the body. And Chris says, why don't you go home and fuck your mother some more? And
Yep.
It is a powerful delivery from River Phoenix.
And then Ace kind of smirks a little, like he's getting off on it, right?
And then he just gets out his switchblade and goes, you're dead.
Yeah, he's not happy he said that to him, but he likes that he's being challenged because now he can step it up.
That's true, right.
And he's getting off on that.
He's escalating a bit.
Yeah, he's like, okay, now I can get the knife out and do something about this.
And Eyeball is like, hey, Ace, come on, man.
Yeah, because it's his brother, right?
It's his little brother. But he doesn't stop him. And that's when I'm just like, okay, for God's sake, Eyeball, show some fucking balls.
Everyone's so afraid of Ace.
We just talked about the odds.
Yeah.
There's 7 of you, just rush Ace and get the knife out of his hand.
They've got him so under their control, right? And that's what gangs do, right?
Yeah.
The leader is in charge.
Yeah.
You don't
Total
do
authority.
anything to him.
Right.
Yeah, and Chris says, you're going to have to kill me. And so he comes real close with that knife to get him. And he kind of does a lunge towards his neck.
Right.
I don't know if he's actually going to cut him here, but he's getting him in a position where he's really going to threaten him.
Right.
But as that's happening, Gordy fires the gun in the air. You hear it go off, and then it cuts to Gordy holding that gun. Barely holding the gun. And it's smoking.
Yeah.
And he's got it pointed right at Ace.
Right.
Yeah. He came to his friend's rescue.
And Ace is trying to talk him out of it, like he says he invokes the name of Denny again. You must have some of your brother's good sense.
Yeah.
Tells him, like, hey, listen, you don't have the guts to shoot me, and he's trying to talk him out of it, but as he gets closer, like Gordy cocks the gun again. No, don't you come near me, Ace. I'll kill you. I swear to God. And then he has like, he has a line that Will Wheaton is still trying to like live down to this day. It's a great line, but it's just because it was delivered, in such a way. It's famous. It's suck my fat one, you cheap dime store hood.
Yes, it's quite a line.
It is.
On our old podcast, we did an episode about one-liners, and I had it in my top 3. Yes. Who thought Will Wheaton would stand up against Arnold Schwarzenegger?
It's a great line.
It is. But yeah, it's great. And Ace tells him, like, you don't have the balls. You're not going to do it.
Right.
And he cocks it. And it really puts Ace on his heels.
Right.
And Kiefer Sutherland gives a great performance here, too, because you can see when his thoughts change to, okay, there's a small chance he might shoot me. Yeah. I'm going to back out, and we're going to play this out a different way.
Right.
And so then he backs off, and he switches to threatening him that this isn't over, and we're going to get you.
Which is quite chilling. Like, as the years went on and I watched it more and more, I kept thinking about, like, what is day 3 of this?
Yeah.
Because when Ace says, this isn't over, this is big time, baby.
Yeah.
He means it. And I believe him, and, it's going to be bad.
Yes. Blood was going to spill, like, minutes before.
Yeah.
Literally spilling blood. And now it's pushed off to a later date when you don't know it's coming.
Man. I
can't live with that.
No, I can't either. Just do it now,
Yes. Just do it, please. But they all leave. That Gordy has saved his friend from physical harm.
Yeah, yeah.
And they protected the body.
That's true.
Because at this point, they've grown so much. They're not here to see the body. They're not here to get famous anymore. They're here to help. Do the right thing.
And Gordy like talks everybody out of it after Ace and the other guys leave. They're like he's like, listen, we're not taking him. And he said it during the confrontation with the gun too. He said, you're not taking him, nobody's taking him.
Yeah.
And his new plan is like he's telling the guys, look, we're not going to get famous this way, and it's not the right thing to do either. We're going to like just let's make him a stretcher, and then we'll call it in.
Yeah.
Anonymous call.
Yeah. So he goes from we're going to be famous to this ain't right.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And that's not the only growth they've had throughout the movie, right?
Of course, right.
It's just symbolic of all the growth they've had as individuals. It's wonderful, man.
It is.
And they like cover it with the blanket, and then you get the voiceover saying they made an anonymous call, and it cuts to them walking back, and he says, "We barely spoke on the way home." And that just shows like how impactful this was to them.
Yeah, of course. Right.
It was an experience greater than them.
They had a lot to think about on their walk home, and I imagine that, like, he doesn't say it, but I think it probably took them less time to get home.
Yeah.
Because they probably were just, okay, let's just get this done. We've made this journey. We're not going to like have a nice time here. Let's just get back to town and get on with our lives.
Yeah. And who knows how they did it? Maybe they took the road. Maybe they just took the train track back.
Right.
I mean, I have no clue, but that's not important.
No, of course, yeah.
Did you have to pay to get into the pie eating contest, Dave? How did these kids get home? I need to know, right? We need to know. Did they take a car?
That's true. Right. Yeah, that was some Vern speculation. You're right.
Yes, exactly. And he says, we'd only been gone 2 days, but somehow the town felt different, smaller. And yeah, it definitely does, right?
Of course, right.
It's awesome.
Yeah,
They wrap it up with, as time went on, they saw less of Teddy and Vern. Chris ultimately did take classes with Gordy and became pretty smart. He went to college,
Right.
Became a lawyer. So these formative experiences here really helped push him in a new direction.
Yes. Gordy was able to like talk him into not accepting his fate of just being like a no good Chambers kid.
Right. You want to be Ace?
Right.
Do you want to be your brother? Come on, guys.
Right.
You can try something different.
Yeah. Come with me.
Yeah. And it worked.
Yep.
And then we find out that, the newspaper we saw at the beginning, it was Chris Chambers. It says it.
Yes.
But if you're not paying attention, you don't know it's him.
And
you might forget about the paper.
Right. And you don't know who Chris Chambers is yet.
Yeah. It's not for another minute or a couple minutes. But,
right.
So it's bittersweet, to hear that he died. And the way he did die is two people were arguing at a restaurant, like a fast food restaurant, actually,
Yes.
in front of him. And someone pulled a knife, and Chris tried to help. He
Right.
tried to stop and calm the situation. And he ended up getting stabbed in the neck and dying. Which I just thought of it, actually. That's what Ace was going to do to him. He was
Right.
going to stab him in the neck.
Yeah.
So that's kind of crazy.
Yes, it is. And we get this shot of like River Phoenix walking away from the treehouse. He turns around and waves at Gordy, and then he fades out of the picture.
Yeah.
And obviously, River Phoenix dying so young. I mean, like this is, it's just whatever I think of River Phoenix, I think of this moment.
Yeah. Man.
It's sad.
It's a really sad thing that you can't plan for something like that.
Yeah.
And having something in a movie like that,
It's devastating.
it makes it even sadder.
I know. I almost, it's not like something I can't watch, but I mean, every time I see it, I'm just like, ugh, that's right.
And I'll tell you what,
That's right.
I'm glad it's there, right?
I
like
know.
that's just,
Yeah.
this is some kind of like legacy type thing that just goes beyond other things.
You're right. It's so tragic, but that it's there is so significant and cool. And no matter how much time goes by, you have this document of this person who was there.
It's incredible. It's like a James Dean, right?
I know.
Like dying so young and being in films where he's racing cars and doing those things. That's like how he died.
I mean, he was 23.
Yeah. And River Phoenix has been compared to James Dean a lot, too.
And I think that I'd argue he had the superior career because he had a longer time
He did.
of it,
Yeah.
And because he was acting since he was a child, and he did a lot of work, for someone that young. you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, definitely. Dean only made 3 films.
Yes.
So, yeah, River Phoenix definitely had more time and more output.
Right.
But both excellent people taken too soon. All right, so at the very end, we see Richard Dreyfuss with his kids, right?
Yeah.
And I guess he's living a great life here as a writer now.
Yeah,
he
he's
finally
got
followed his dreams.
Quite a nice house.
Yeah, this like den he's writing in,
Man.
it's like a library.
It's like the library in Qube.
Yes.
It's gigantic.
And we see him leave with the 2 kids out the window. It's like this huge bay window.
Yeah.
And they're going around the circle driveway
Man,
he has
circular
around the
driveway.
fountain.
That's money.
It's like,
Exactly.
wow, this guy's rich.
Yes. Right.
Yeah. Well, he and Chris did well for themselves, I guess.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, he became a famous writer, and he must. Man, yeah, Gordy's doing well.
Yeah. And cue the song in the credits. Stand By Me starts playing.
Right.
And that's the movie, everybody. Dave, you got anything else?
Well, the scene at the campfire, right before they do the Gordy tells the Lard Ass Hogan story, they smoke cigarettes,
Yes.
and it's specifically a pack of Winstons that Chris had stolen from his old man. It's what made me want to smoke cigarettes.
Oh, wow. Really?
I never forgot Vern's comment about like there's nothing like a smoke after a meal. I had to know what he meant.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, he was right.
Yeah.
Because it's delicious. And
Oh my God.
and yeah, I kind of based the next however many years of my life on that exact sentiment for all that time. And luckily that's all
Yeah.
past.
Yeah.
But like this, yeah, I fell to not peer pressure, but like the movies made me do it.
Right.
It
sucks. Like people talk about that stuff, right?
Right.
Like, influencing children.
Of course.
It works. It happens.
Yes.
Intentionally or not.
Yes,
it
that's
really
right.
does happen.
It totally, man.
Oh, man.
And then another thing on the featurette was some cool stuff about the Yankee cap.
Yeah.
Mainly that they were about to shoot the scene where Ace and Eyeball arrive at the tracks, and Kiefer Sutherland was going to walk up wearing the hat. And
Yes.
Rob Reiner said no. Ace would never mess up his hair.
Yeah. This
And-
hat means nothing to him.
Yes. And he had to tell, like, Kiefer Sutherland that, and he had to tell Will Wheaton that, because, like, Will Wheaton was like, hey, how come I don't get my hat back?
Yeah.
And Rob Reiner's like, because Eyeball and Ace threw that hat in the garbage when they rounded the corner, you know?
Yeah.
Which is, that is the right thing.
Right? It
You know?
makes so much sense.
Right.
I can understand from a storytelling perspective, just purely that.
Yes.
The hat might come into play again. Like when you introduce the gun, right?
Of
The
course.
hat is an important, pivotal scene
Yeah.
when he takes it, right?
Yeah.
You would think he might get it back or it would come into play somehow. No. Ace ain't messing up his hair. He never wanted this hat in the first place.
Yeah.
He just wanted to fucking torture this little kid.
That's right.
And that's all it meant.
He's a sadist.
I think it's great he didn't get it back because at the end, Gordy has grown so much.
Right.
And he's, like he said, he never even cried at his brother's funeral. This is the first time he cried for his brother. He's letting it go. He doesn't need the hat anymore.
Right.
Like he's getting through this.
Right.
It's wonderful he doesn't get it back. I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to mention that whole
Oh, yeah.
thing.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
totally forgot. Because there's so
Right.
much other amazing stuff to discuss in the film.
Absolutely. And the last thing was that I love Rob Reiner. We all do.
Yeah.
You know, he's a great filmmaker. He was a great actor. You know, I mean, Meathead Stivic is an excellent character, and he, you know, was awesome on All in the Family. But the commentary track on this DVD is one of the lamest I've ever heard.
Oh.
Not because of what he says. It's because of what he doesn't say. I was so looking forward to this commentary, but I was so disappointed because instead of talking about his creative process, Rob Reiner just watches the movie.
Does he just say, like, oh, and this is where they walk down the track?
Dude.
And this is where Kiefer Sutherland comes. That's
Yes,
all he says.
But it's only every 10 or 15 minutes.
Really? So he's, like, quiet.
He's quiet the whole time. Like 20 minutes will pass, and then he'll just be like, oh, this was a fun day.
Oh, my God. Come
Man,
on.
I realize it's weird to complain about this kind of thing, but Rob Reiner is not only an intelligent guy who you'd like to hear him talk, but he's also, like, famously gregarious, and, you know, you're expecting that he'd enjoy talking about one of his most beloved films, and luckily he does talk a lot about on that documentary we've been referring to.
Yeah, I watched it the other day in preparation for the show,
Yes.
and it's a great one. But, man, that's a bummer.
It
so
is.
no one else did the commentary with him either.
It's just him, yeah.
It might have been great if someone else was there.
Yeah,
Will
yeah.
Wheaton would have been amazing. Like, he's an incredible YouTuber and stuff now.
Oh, yeah.
Like, and he's still a performer. Like, he's out there and hosts shows and things. Like, he would be a great commentary partner.
You know what? If Will Wheaton put on a neckerchief, he'd be like young Peter Bogdanovich. You know?
would.
He's a raconteur.
Dude. Yeah.
There it is. Okay.
He
There's your
needs those
future role.
glasses. The big, like, granny glasses,
Yes,
dude.
Right.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So would you say the book is better than the movie, Dave? Or the movie's better than the book?
It's hard for me to say because
Okay.
I read the book long after I'd seen the movie a million times.
Okay.
You know, and yeah, I did read it after again, you know, in preparation for this show. I finished it like, you know, I don't know,
Right.
hours before I came over here. You know,
You sent me a text last night. And apparently the mayor's name in the book, the mayor of, like, the lard-ass Barfarama story, his name is Mayor Charboneau. Who would have thought?
it was the most amazing connection. I'm reading this book. And I'm like, oh my god! It's in, there's the line is like, you know, then Mayor Charboneau introduces lard ass. And I was like, oh Jesus!
Pretty awesome.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yep. It made my night, Dave.
Yes, dude, that's
good.
so cool. But yeah, the book is like, okay, so there are some things in the book that answer some of the questions we had. I mean, like, we know what happens to the characters,
Like how they got home at the end?
Well,
Like-
actually, yes.
it does? Okay.
Yes,
okay.
they go across the trestle again, but it's really insignificant.
Okay.
But the thing is, they do, you know, we find out, like, their fate when it comes to, like, Ace and Eyeball. You know, what happens to,
Oh, wow.
like, the boys, like, Gordy's walking home from school, and Ace and another guy named Fuzzy, they jump him, and it's really violent and terrible.
Oh, man.
And then Chris, eyeball, as soon as he gets home, he tortures Chris, and like he sends him to the hospital, breaks his arm in 2 places and everything. And really bad stuff. And Vern gets it from Billy. Teddy gets jumped by some other guys too. And spoiler alert for the book, everybody. It's not just Chris who dies. Vern and Teddy also die young.
Wow.
Teddy dies in a car crash, and Vern, I just read it, but I can't remember what happens to him exactly, but he dies young too. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I like the movie ending, I think.
I do too.
I mean, I love morbid death at the end of a movie, Dave.
Right. Of course.
But but I prefer the film ending.
Yes. Actually, I think Vern dies when he's like 18. It's
man.
Yeah, it's really bad.
Probably just being a bumbling idiot.
Right.
Got into some bad situation.
And they really go into it further with like Vern's, I guess, inability, like his I guess
his denseness.
Yes, like he's really like the father, Marshall Bell, Mr. LaChance. He makes mention of like how I guess Vern was sleeping over one time, and he like it took him 2 hours to read the funny papers or whatever, and that's really mean and terrible, but it's but yeah, the other thing too, I guess Casey Zamasco as Billy, like he was in a ton of movies around this time. He was 3D.
Yeah.
In Back to the Future.
Right.
And then he played Charlie in Young Guns. And then I saw a movie called 3 O'Clock High where he plays him and Crisp from Kindergarten Cop.
Yeah.
They square off in like a fight after school, and yeah.
Dude.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Awesome.
Yes.
Crisp, man. I love Crisp.
I know,
the
man.
name and the ponytail.
Dude,
like,
yes.
Yep.
And it's wild watching him, like, they're trying to say he's in high school. And it's like 4 years before Kindergarten Cop.
Uh-huh.
There's no way this guy who's easily 45 years old is in high school, man.
Yep. Not at all, man.
Great, the 80s.
All right. So would you recommend the movie?
Absolutely, man. Yeah, go see Stand By Me, everybody.
Yep. This, I would argue, is an essential. This is an all-time great film.
Yep.
And it's not just nostalgia. This is a film everyone needs to watch.
No question,
It's
man.
unbelievably good. All right, so that wraps things up. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to our show anywhere you get your podcast. Rate it, review it, most of all, share it. It gets more dudes listening to the dudes, and you can go to dudesonmovies.com and find anything you need right there.
Yep, and we're on Facebook, Blue Sky, TikTok, and Instagram. Just look for Dudes on Movies, and our email address is dudesonmovies@gmail.com.
That's right, and Dave, we have a question of the week. What is the question of the week?
What movies do you remember watching with a babysitter?
Oh, baby! That's a good one. Let us know on any of those outlets Dave just mentioned, and stay tuned next week when we discuss 1926's The General, directed by Buster Keaton and Clyde Bruckman, and starring Buster Keaton. So until next week, I'm your dude Scott.
I'm your dude Dave.
And we'll see you next time.